Have you ever wondered what it's like to work in law enforcement? Here on Behind the Star, we share stories about the Orange County Sheriff's Office, Central Florida's largest law enforcement agency. From forensics to dispatch to the deputies on patrol, we'll talk to the brave men and women who protect our community. This is Behind the Star, the official podcast of the Orange County Sheriff's Office. Welcome to Behind the Star, the official podcast of the Orange County Sheriff's Office. My name is John Bustecker, your host. And before I get to the interview today, I want to remind everybody that we love it when you subscribe to Behind the Star. We love having all the comments that you send us and all the feedback. But if you could subscribe on iTunes or Google Play or wherever you get your favorite podcast, that way every time we do a new episode, you will get a reminder when we have a new one out. So we try to do these about once a week. And if you didn't catch last week's with Captain Espinoza of the Professional Standards section, I had a good time chatting with him. I know sometimes people think the internal affairs get a bad reputation around law enforcement, but we had a really good conversation about that and how he tries to keep us all honest. And so if you missed that one, go listen to that one. But today I am actually on location. A lot of times I do these podcasts out of Central Ops, which if you're not familiar with the Sheriff's Office, it's basically at John Young Parkway and Colonial Drive. And that's where I work out of. So that's usually where the podcast happens. But today I'm actually out on location. I'm here at the Orange County Sheriff's Office firearms range. This is where our deputies train, and I'm here on Wee Wahooty Road, if you've ever heard of that. It's kind of in southeast Orange County. To be honest with you, kind of in the middle of nowhere, but if you're going to have a firearms range, you better kind of be out in the middle of nowhere. And we are here with Captain Todd Payne and Lieutenant Dennis Ela, and they are both on the SWAT team. Welcome to both of you to Behind the Star.
Oh, thank you. Glad to be here.
Thanks, John.
All right. And so I'm excited about today's podcast because, you hear about SWAT, you see what they do. Sometimes you see them on the news and they're going into buildings and they're doing all this work to catch bad guys. And so I kind of wanted to talk to both of you of exactly how the SWAT team works and how you end up on it and what you got to do to train. So I'm glad both of you are here. So let's start with a simple question. I'll start with Captain Payne here. What exactly is SWAT? Maybe just explain kind of in general, what does the SWAT team do?
Well, first, John, SWAT actually is an acronym, stands for Special Weapons and Tactics. And it is a team of law enforcement officers who receive advanced training and specialized equipment to handle situations that exceed the capabilities of first responders, which include our patrol personnel, our investigators. And those type of situations are wide and varied and consist of things like sniper incidences, hostage situations, terrorist acts, things like that normal patrol deputies aren't equipped or trained to respond to.
So how long have you been on the SWAT team? How did you end up over here?
It's been a long time. I'm sure I can remember that far back. But I came on the team in 1996.
So what exactly is your job with SWAT?
I'm the captain of the team. I'm also captain over what's called our HRI, our High Risk Incident Command. But one of those responsibilities is to be the commander of the team. So with that responsibility, I oversee a team of about 42 SWAT personnel to include tactical medics on the team. And I have Lieutenant Ela as the assistant commander, and we're responsible for handling the everyday duties of the team and also for resolving critical incidences from a command perspective.
So, Lieutenant Ela, how did you end up here on the SWAT? Do we call it the SWAT or the SWAT team? What should I call it?
Probably the SWAT team.
SWAT team. All right. So how did you end up on the SWAT team?
I was a young man. I came on this team in 1998 and full of ambition and like the challenge throughout life. I've liked team sports. I've liked things that challenge me personally. And it wasn't very long being with the agency where I saw a group of people that I admired a great deal. The way they carried themselves, their confidence, their competence, the way they were able to help others around them, get better, and I decided that that was a goal of mine to become part of that.
So Captain Payne said you sort of handle the everyday stuff here on the SWAT team. What does that mean?
Oh, it's everything from scheduling events or high-risk search warrant service to doing public presentations, public events that we do on a frequent basis, community programs, responding to critical incidents as they unfold, team training, agency training. We train every sworn member of this agency annually in critical tasks, high-risk event response. And we also provide a lot of kind of background, not so much scene protection for public events, just to make sure that we're there should something go wrong to be able to protect the public.
Do you mean like a Pro Bowl event or something like that, like a big sporting event, or just something where there's a lot of people? You might be there to make sure everything goes okay.
Could be anything from a presidential visit to a football game, a big concert, or something of that nature.
So, Captain Payne, how does this work? I mean, when are you called out? I mean, how does that work? Does something happen and then you get called from the patrol deputies, or just maybe walk me through if something's happening in the county? When does the SWAT team show up?
A typical scenario would be an incident that occurs out on the street somewhere where patrol deputies respond. They get there, they realize that it's exceeding what they have the capability of dealing with. So their supervisor gets on scene, they stabilize the scene, they'll make a phone call. It could come to me, but typically it will go to the high-risk incident commander. The high-risk incident commander will evaluate and assess what they're being told. They'll usually call me, we'll have a discussion about it, determine if it meets a criteria for a SWAT response, and if so, then I will put out a page to the team. We'll respond to a particular staging location, and then we'll deploy from there.
So what's the criteria? Is it just, I mean, I'm sure it depends on the situation, but you had said earlier that, if the patrol deputy isn't equipped to handle the situation, is that usually like a firearms thing? Like they don't have enough firepower, or like why wouldn't a patrol deputy be equipped to handle a certain situation?
Well, an example would be an individual who has high-powered rifle or some other sort of weapon system or explosive devices, things like that.
Okay.
They're taking maybe a hostage. It could be a domestic situation, turns into a hostage situation where they lock the house, they secure the house and fortify it, and make it very difficult for the deputies to do some sort of entry. A lot of our deputies aren't trained for that advanced tactical problem. So for things like that, we can help resolve a sniper situation like you saw in D.C. years ago.
Oh, yeah.
At the University of Texas in the 1960s, where they had a shooter in the tower who was shooting what would be called today an active assailant or an active shooter situation, where it would take specialized skill and tools to access the level where the shooter's at. That would be a type of situation that SWAT would respond for.
So, Lieutenant Ela, let's say it's a house. I mean, because I think that's when you see SWAT a lot, at least on the news. It might be somebody who's barricaded into a house, and you guys show up, and you're all there. So what happens? Let's say that's the situation, and you show up. Like, what's the first thing that SWAT does?
Just to add on to real quick to what he just said, one of the things that we bring to the table that the normal package, if you will, of first responders does not have access to is a lot more options. So what we bring to a scenario is many different ways to resolve it. And our overwhelming goal with all of those options is that we resolve it without anybody getting hurt. And we have a tremendous track record of that. Whereas a patrol deputy, and this isn't a slight on anybody in patrol because we're all patrol deputies.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You just only have so many tools and so many capabilities. It's very limited on what your options are. We bring a lot more options to keep ourselves safer, to put ourselves in a position to resolve something that a patrol deputy would not be able to without putting themselves in harm's way or in unnecessary peril. So that's the biggest thing to me, what we bring to the table.
So like with a house, let's say somebody's barricaded in a house. I mean, is it like how you see on TV where you try to make contact with them and you start making phone calls and you start trying to talk them out, or is it completely different than that?
No, it's, one of the things, the SWAT team is only one element of a critical incident response for what you're talking about. We're one piece of that puzzle. So what comes with us is a negotiator package as well, which is a separate specialty within our agency. It brings intelligence officers who can dig through data and determine what a person's history is, what their capabilities are, what their criminal history is. It brings information about the structure, about the layout,
Really?
access points. There's a whole package that comes with us. We're just one piece. So it's really the collective of all of those coming together. And again, the biggest thing that I can reiterate is that it opens up so many more options as to potential resolutions and so many other ways for somebody to peacefully surrender without harming anybody else, that that's really what the success is.
And you said that's the ultimate goal every time, is to make sure who's ever inside or whatever the incident is, you want it to resolve safely. I mean, the idea isn't to do something violent unless it has to happen that way. But the best case scenario is resolving it peacefully.
That's correct. One of the main goals of a SWAT team and one of the main uses of a SWAT team is to prevent shootings and save lives.
Mm-hmm.
We're there to enhance the safety of everybody involved, to include law enforcement, the suspects, and of course the victims and innocent bystanders. And by our deployment, typically history has shown that increases the chance of the not for the use of violence.
So when you put the call out, how does that work? You said there's 42 people on the team, or roughly 42 people?
Yes, sir.
So when you put the call out, are they just like waiting around for these calls all day, or are they doing other jobs and then they get, the bat signal goes up and they come out? How does that work?
When the call goes out, we usually have an hour response time expectation for our personnel. And as Lieutenant Ela was saying, it is a huge package that typically responds to those incidences. And with that response and that page, the expectation, they respond to a particular staging area that's already been established. It's a command area away from the target location, but still within a protective perimeter, so innocent bystanders don't stumble into the perimeter, things like that. Once we get there, then that's when the planning process starts, and those other components, the negotiators and the intelligence people, are all working together as one unit to try to resolve the situation.
But it's not all 42 people don't show up, is it?
It may be dependent.
It may be.
It may be dependent on the scenario. Certainly, something with a large structure, it is dependent upon the situation. A search warrant that may be considered high risk because of the individuals involved or the weapons involved may not necessitate an entire team call out. That may be half that number. Something to that effect.
And I want to talk about the search warrant or the warrants. I do want to talk about that a little bit later. But so if you're on the SWAT team, is this your job at the Orange County Sheriff's Office, Lieutenant Ela? Is this what you do full time if you're on the SWAT team?
So we have a mix there. We have a contingent of folks that are assigned to the SWAT team as their full-time responsibility. We currently have 13 personnel, not including the captain and myself, that are assigned full-time duties to SWAT, and then the remainder of the personnel have another primary function within the agency, and they work everywhere. They work in criminal investigations, they work in TAC, they work in patrol, all over the agency. So a variety of different responsibilities.
Yeah, and I've seen some of them out here and there when doing my job as the storyteller at the sheriff's office. So I wasn't sure if it was a full-time thing or not. So how does one get to be on the SWAT team? Well, tell me about the process. I mean, do you apply or do you recruit people? I mean, how do I get to be on? Not me. I'm not going to be on the SWAT team. But how do deputies end up on the SWAT team? Captain Pate?
It is a process, and it's a long process, but it's a thorough process because the expectations are high, and they should be because the public has a high expectation for us. But when we have openings for personnel, we put out something to the agency. It's a vacancy posting that announces a specific number of openings. At that point, individuals will apply. They have to submit a memorandum of interest. They have to submit a candidate summary form, which talks about their background, some things that we are interested in, maybe their education, their military experience, their experience in law enforcement, any other special skills that they may have. They have to submit that to us. Once that's submitted to us and they meet a criteria, such as they've been on with the agency for over a year, they're not disciplinary issues, things like that, then they will meet for a week of what we call phase one. It's a week-long process, and that consists of a physical test, a swimming test, 2 firearms tests, a ability to rappel with the team. They have to do our obstacle course to show that they have an ability to complete that course successfully. All of that day test their preparation, because they're given 12 weeks notice prior to this test of the upcoming test, where they have time to train. The agency has tremendous facilities for training and getting in shape, and including a wellness coordinator that can get with them on a fitness program to enhance their chances of passing the test. So they spend that day doing those events. Then those that successfully pass those events will then move on to what we call a transfer review board, which is simply an interview with team personnel, usually hosted by Lieutenant Ela. And then if they successfully pass that, they'll move on to phase two. And Dennis, you want to talk about?
Yeah. So the physical stuff, and there's a reason there's the physical stuff. I've been out here, so every year, or at least since I've seen, they do something here called Swat Roundup, and you see people from all over the world come out to our facility to do basically like SWAT games almost. And you see some of the things that the teams have to go through, and you got to be in good shape to be on the SWAT team. And you can't just be somebody who shows up and say, I want to be on the SWAT team. I mean, it is a physical, you got to be physically fit to be on the team. So I get why there's all these tests. Well, real quick though, Lieutenant, why a swimming test? Why do you guys have a swimming test?
So a unique thing to us, as opposed to a lot of other law enforcement groups or entities, is that we're kind of the last ditch. So we're the last stop. Like, there's nowhere to go. If we can't resolve it, there's nowhere to go. Part of that is that we have to be able to operate in any environment, under any conditions, weather conditions, terrain, water, it doesn't matter. If we have an issue that's a waterborne event, I'm not going to get into specifics on what we've talked about or what we plan for, but if we have an incident that's on a vessel on the water, we have to have people who can swim.
Yeah.
If you've ever been in a plane flying over Central Florida as you're coming in for approach in Orlando, and you look down at the houses, what do you see in every backyard?
Lots of lakes.
Lots of
pools. Yes, and pools. Yeah.
So we have to be able to perform and survive and thrive in every environment that our environment in Central Florida here provides for us. And swimming is obviously one of those things that if you can't do it, it's certainly going to encumber your ability to perform in a lot of different operations that we might be called into.
So that's phase one. What's phase two of the process to get on the SWAT team?
So after completing the battery of tests and the interview that Captain Payne talked about, we put on a 2-week basic SWAT seminar. And during that 2-week seminar, there's a host of tactics and skills that are presented, instructed, and evaluated. And everybody who has invited to attend that from our selection process is rigorously evaluated on their aptitude, their attitude, and their performance. And, it's kind of I think a misnomer that SWAT teams are just looking for that big, muscle-bound, guy, just, whatever, Hulk kind of guy, whatever.
You got a few of them on the SWAT team.
But, physical conditioning and physical performance is very important, but the aptitude is more important. So the ability to adjust to scenarios, to automatically or quickly come to what the right course of conduct is, what the right resolution for the problem that you're facing is more important than anything else. So we really evaluate a candidate's ability over that 2-week period to absorb the information that we're giving them, and then to perform what we've shown them to do. And obviously people make mistakes, but if we have somebody who we've reiterated the same issue 2, 4, or 5 times and they're not getting it, that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for someone who can absorb the information and with minimal mistakes apply what we're showing them to do.
So let's say they pass all that, they pass phase 2. Is now the time you get to be on the SWAT team, or?
Well, once you complete phase 2, we will select the candidates at that point who will move forward to phase 3.
Okay.
Right? So phase 3 is.
There's not 100 phases, are there?
No,
we
no,
only have
this
so much
is it.
time on the podcast here.
This is it, but
All
it's a
right,
long one.
Yeah.
All right, this one is for the rest of the year.
Oh, okay.
So during that year period, they are considered trainees on the team, and it's a learning process. The year period gives us a great chance to evaluate who they are as a person and as a teammate. We're looking for things like maturity, confidence, and competence for the level that they're at, not arrogance. We're looking for do they have the mental discipline to maintain physical conditioning for a long time. That year is a long period for them because they have a tremendous amount of responsibility during that year. But their decision-making ability, their ability to operate in a team environment and operate and mesh with the team members, we get a good look during that time period. They are tasked with various responsibilities without going into a lot of detail that does put a certain amount of stress on them because they need to learn to operate in that stressful situation, that stressful environment. So that gives us a good a chance to evaluate them, and at the end of that 12-month period, that's when they'll be considered actual teammates.
All right. So you sort of alluded to this a little bit earlier, and I should have said this at the beginning, is that there's a lot of things that the SWAT team does that is sort of, we keep it close to the chest. We don't want to give away all the things that we do because, you don't want the bad guys to know all the tactics that we have. However, I say that, but I wanted to ask, can you talk a little bit about like training, not necessarily specifics, but I mean, what kind of training do you have to do? I mean, how do you prepare for some of these incidences that you have to handle throughout the year? Because I'm sure they're all different. I'm sure no two situations are the same. So how do you even prepare as a member of the SWAT team? I'll let either one of you answer that one. And once again, I'm not trying to get specific on anything, but I'm sure there's certain tactics that you run through out here at the firearms range where we are right now that you're constantly training for whatever scenario could happen next.
Well, I'll start and give you a broad perspective,
Okay.
and then I'll put Dennis on the hot seat with the specifics. Now, with the responsibilities that we have, and the expectation within the community is very high because if an incident occurs that's a criminal type of incident, there's not anybody else to call. You're not going to call in the Army, things like that. We have to have the capability of resolving that incident. So our toolbox has to be very huge. And that toolbox encompasses a huge amount of skill sets, right? Whether it's operating in a CBRN environment, which means chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, and explosive. We, as our team, is the primary response team for 9 counties for a CBRN incident. That's operating with full protective suits on, SCBAs, which are self-contained breathing apparatus. We have to be able to operate in that environment in August in that heated conditions, because who else is going to handle those environments? That's an example. But
And you make a good point there. I think these are things that people, when I say people, average people don't even think about. Because once again, my idea of the SWAT team is, the guy in the house and he's holding a hostage and that's it. Because that's usually what you see, because that's just what's on TV. But there's so much more to it. Because, a lot of things can happen or not, but you train for whatever could possibly happen.
And that toolbox runs a wide gamut from trauma care, immediate trauma care. We have 4 tactical medics assigned to the team. They may not always be with us. Our team members in a hot environment have to be able to provide that medical care. So that's training. Entering into a structure that has been fortified, a bad guy knows we're outside. There's a lot of techniques, a lot of tactics that go into that, and a lot of practice and training for very specialized methods of entry. It is so wide and varied that fortunately as a team, we are lucky that we have that opportunity to train. Our training schedule and having a full-time component allows us probably to exceed the training opportunities that other teams have.
And Lieutenant Ela, is that kind of how it works? I mean, certain scenarios come up and you train for those scenarios, or even do you pay attention to what's happening in the world and say, all right, there was a shooting at a school and this is what happened. We're going to train because we learned a little bit from that incident, and that could maybe happen here in Central Florida. So we're going to take the tactics that SWAT team used and we're going to try to train on them here. Is that how it works here?
Yeah. So I'm a very big advocate of learning vicariously. I don't like to learn lessons directly.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not a good place to do on-the-job training with the SWAT.
It's the community that we exist in as far as the SWAT community. We share stories, we share debriefs of incidents, and we are constantly reading things that happen. And even for, the average citizen, watch the news and look at a terrible event that's happened somewhere in the world, whether it's a terrorist incident or, an active shooter or whatever the case is. It's our job to see that and to have a plan to counter that. We don't wait for it to happen here. We have to have an answer. We have to have a play in the playbook, to go to an old football analogy, for that. Okay, so that's the offense. We're the defense. How do we counter that offense? And that's a big part of what we do. There are a lot of commonalities on tactics that respond to almost all of those things, but adjusting those tactics to particular scenarios is where the rubber meets the road. And having the assets, being a larger agency like we are, we have a lot of access to a lot of assets and a lot of very expensive things that keep this community safe, whether it's deploying out of a helicopter or being able to, as you were with us at the Children's Hospital a few weeks ago, being able to rappel off a 110-foot story structure. All of those things are things that we have to have the ability to respond to, because that's the environment. Like I said before, we have single-story houses and we have 30-story structures in Orange County that we have to be able to answer the problem no matter where it happens.
Yeah. So tell me again, Captain Payne, how long have you been on the SWAT team?
Over 20 years, about 22 years.
And Lieutenant Ela, how long?
I came on in 1998.
All right, so 21 years, or 22 almost this year. So both of you have been on for a long time. I'm sure you've been to a lot of incidents throughout your career. I mean, what's it like? I mean, when you get that call and you hear something's going on and you're the ones that have to rush out there. I mean, what's it feel? I mean, are you nervous? Are you scared? Is your adrenaline going? I mean, what sort of, I'll ask both of you, because since both of you have done this, I'll start with Captain Payne. I mean, what's it like to get that call and knowing that you're maybe rushing towards danger?
Well, with the years of experience, with those years comes confidence in your ability to do your job. You know the job, so it's just like any other profession. When you get that call, your mind starts going into, all right, what do I do next? What is necessary to continue or to move forward with the issue or the situation? And so it starts with making phone calls, getting things moving forward. You're not really thinking about the nerves and things like that. It's about what's next, what are your duties, what's your responsibilities, and getting that ball rolling. It's almost where, for us who have this level of experience and a team that has this experience and the support that we have, it's a process that, while not routine because the situation is not routine, but the actual steps to achieving success in that process is something that we've gotten down to a very thorough and competent practice.
Same for you, Lieutenant? I mean, are you nervous when you go to the scene, or were you maybe earlier in your career? And
I would definitely say earlier, but just to kind of reiterate what he said, with time and experience and doing things over and over again, you get the nerves go away, and you get a certain level of confidence or competence, not arrogance, but competence in what you're doing. It's no different. I tell people this analogy all the time. If you can remember back to when you first got your driver's permit.
Yeah.
And you were first sitting in the driver's seat, operating that car in traffic, and you can remember your heart rate accelerating and the unsurety that you had and just all of those butterflies in your stomach. When you get in your car and drive to work now, do you even think about it?
No, not at all.
So it's not quite that level, but it's kind of similar. Once you've done this for a long time, you get that level of competence and comfort and assurity with the level of expertise of the group of folks that you work with, that the nerves really don't play a factor in it. It's more just doing your job.
There's always concern and apprehension in every situation that we deal with, but as Lieutenant Ely was saying, through the years of experience, which is why I guess, as you age in this practice, you move to these positions, because the young guys, they're probably a little bit different than us old salts here, but the experience and the training that we've had and the people that we operate with, I've worked with dentists for over 20 years. There is that comfort and confidence with that. So it definitely helps in those situations to have that.
So we talked a little bit about maybe the hostage situation where, or somebody's barricaded in a house, but that's not everything. That's not what you do all the time out here with SWAT. You mentioned high risk warrants. So tell me a little bit about that. I mean, you just get called out to go to serve warrants, or explain what that is?
Okay, with us, with the execution of search warrants, typically a unit within our agency, say narcotics or homicide, will develop probable cause and obtain a search warrant for a location for evidence. They will call us, and then we will analyze the information they're providing us and determine whether or not SWAT is needed to execute that search warrant. Basic common sense type of rules, without going into all our criteria. If there's things involved, like the person has a violent history, it's very anti-police or anti-government, has rifle or weapons, firearms, explosive background, or it's for, he's a narcotics trafficker or a human trafficker, or he's wanted for a homicide, those type of things definitely increase the likelihood that SWAT will be used to execute a search warrant. It's basically using the right tool for the job.
So when you say using SWAT, they just sort of show up to help hand over the warrant? Or, I mean, what exactly? I mean, when you knock on the door and you look through the people and you're like, oh man, there's 20 guys out here with rifles. I better just take the search warrant. Is that kind of what you do? You're just like backup, or they just can see, oh, the whole SWAT team's here, I better be on my best behavior when I get the search warrant?
So there's a variety of different ways that we could serve a warrant. We're not going to probably get into the particulars of all of those, but we have different methodologies of serving a search warrant depending upon that intelligence. It really comes down to the quality of the intelligence that's provided to us in advance, and then when we get advance notice, we do our due diligence on our end, and we do a thorough workup on our end. It has to do with the nature of the people that are known to reside. If it's a residence, for example, the known to reside there, whatever weapons they might have, the structure itself, special problems that we might face with that structure. And based on the totality of the mix of all of the intelligence that's gathered, we decide then what our best avenue is to serve that warrant. And it's not necessarily just a search warrant. In a lot of these cases, it's a search warrant and an arrest warrant. The person who's inside is wanted for a felony crime, more likely than not a violent felony crime. And like I said, we adjust our tactic or our methodology based upon the intelligence that's provided. And really the overwhelming thing that drives our decision there is the safety of everybody involved. What's our analysis, and what do we deem to be the safest method to do what we're going to do, the most likely outcome for everybody to be unharmed?
Can you tell me about some of the vehicles you guys have? Because I know one of them's the Rook, right? And then you also have like the big armored vehicle. Maybe talk a little bit about that, Captain Payne.
Yes, we have two rescue vehicles that are armored and ballistic. We also have equipment vans and some other vehicles that I won't go into detail on, but we know we have the Rook, which is our armored Caterpillar, which has been a huge advantage for us as far as resolving situations peacefully.
Yeah, and what's the purpose of the Rook? It kind of, explain the purpose of the Rook.
Well, the Rook does several things for us. One, it does serve to resolve situations just by its appearance up front, because a lot of people will see it approaching.
And I should say it's sometimes mischaracterized as a tank, but it's not a tank. It's a Rook.
It's a Caterpillar vehicle with armor on it. So it does allow us to get up close. If we have to use it as a breaching implement, we can use it as that. And usually that changes minds and resolves situations peacefully.
If you see that outside of your house, probably a good idea to come outside peacefully.
I would. But so that's one of our tools. It does allow us to communicate close. It allows us to get in tight spaces where we normally couldn't get into maybe. And it allows us to do that safely as opposed to trying to approach it without any protection. Same with armored rescue vehicles. They allow us to rescue citizens who may be in a bad situation. In my experience, and with Lieutenant Ela going back, we've had to use that before to pull people out of situations where they've been under fire, things like that. It allows us to get in close to locations that would normally put us in a bad position. If we didn't have those vehicles, they have consistently shown that they've been able to save and protect not just our lives, but those that we are within the community. So those are our primary operating vehicles other than transport vans.
Is there anything that's happened over the last 20 years, either of you, that can maybe talk about in terms of you're really proud of what the SWAT team did? Maybe there's some sort of situation where, it could have turned out one way, but it ended up happening another way because you were there. I mean, is there something over the course of either of your careers where you said, wow, through our training, through our team, through everything we've done, this could have been bad, but it turned out good?
Singling one of those out might be rather difficult. There's no doubt in my mind that there are, since 1998, since I've been here, there are probably hundreds of situations that if we didn't have the tools and the skills that we bring to bear, that the outcome would have been very different. Now, it could have been loss of life. And also something that sometimes people don't realize is that when you have that person, the scenario that you keep saying that has held themselves up in a house and maybe they have a hostage, we've shut down an entire zone of a city, right? So it's not just the situation that we're dealing with there, but all those surrounding houses and all those surrounding roads, those are people who can't attend to their lives. They can't get home. They can't take care of their lives as well. And a lot of times we're able to resolve a situation peacefully in a much more expedient manner as well to allow people to get back to their lives and allow life to continue as a norm where if you don't have any options, you're sitting there until somebody decides one way or the other what they're going to do.
What keeps you doing this job? What motivates you?
Well, the motivation for this job, there's several factors. One is just the camaraderie with the guys on the team. There's nothing like that. It's like being on a football team. It's working in this tight environment with these guys in these situations. You're not going to get it hardly anywhere else in life, and that has always been a huge motivator for me. I like the challenge, the situations that we are put in, the constant learning. As you mentioned earlier, you're talking about things that occur nationwide. It's really international things we see that occur in other countries, things that we see occurring here, the trend, unfortunately, that you're seeing with some of these active assailants. Working with these guys who are extremely competent and extremely experienced and coming up with the training. That's one thing we do, and I didn't mention, is we do training for the agency in advanced tactics for all personnel here that are sworn. But that challenge in and of itself is always very motivating for me. The things that we do as a team, some of the things that we're required to do in our training, keep it interesting and lively. For a guy who's been on the team over 20 plus years, it's never a dull moment.
Well, Captain Payne, Lieutenant Ela, thank you so much for chatting with me here on Behind the Star. I think I learned a lot because everything I knew was from televisions and movies when it comes to the SWAT team. So it was great chatting with both of you. And I did want to mention that if any of this interests you, if you've ever wanted to be in law enforcement, we are always hiring here at the Orange County Sheriff's Office. So go to OCSO.com. You can get all the information there. And as always, we'll see you next week here on Behind the Star. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to Behind the Star. You can find us wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Also, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Until next time, I'm John Bustecker, and this is Behind the Star.